Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the peak-to-peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
I lost my cool when my headphones tangled into knots.
The song that you are currently listening to is called Tangled Headphones, and it is written and performed by Whalen. You can stream a bunch of his music, including some new singles coming very soon, wherever you get your music, as well as by going to his website at willwhalenmusic.com. And be sure to check him out live at the Canyon Tavern on July 21st. More details coming up later in the podcast.
To force upon me a moment's pause while I fix the mess that he caused.
Hello, my name is Jamie Lammers, and welcome to this week's Wednesday retrospective edition of the Mountaineer Podcast, where I bring back an interview that I wasn't initially able to air back when I conducted it. This time around, we've got another Then and Now episode of the Mountaineer Podcast because the artist in question that I wanted to bring back wanted to do another interview. So I'm happy to have back-to-back interviews with this artist, and I'm also happy to promote a show that he's doing in the near future. But before we get to the present, let's get back to the past. Our guest this week. Do you mind introducing yourself real quick?
My name is Whalen. I'm a singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, live performer around Denver and beyond.
And when I initially conducted this interview last year, 2023, on July 10th, the same date that this podcast is actually going to be aired, you had a show at the Canyon Tavern, didn't you?
Yes, I am performing at the Canyon Tavern pretty much once a month. I believe the next one is July 21st.
This date is actually going to be pretty pertinent for the present interview that I did with Will, but that didn't end up being the show that I promoted at the time because I was stacked with interviews. So, what was the show that I ended up promoting for you back then, Will?
That one is in August, and that is August 18th.
So I wanted to get some background on you. How did you get started in music in the first place?
Okay, well, let's see. The earliest place I can start is probably when I was about 8 years old. My grandma had one of those old-style upright organs with, like, the vacuum tubes in it that made that whirring sound whenever you turn it on. Just kind of sitting in her living room, and so I started playing around on that for a little bit. I'm just finding little different key combinations that were fun to play, and I found I really enjoyed that. It was a nice way to spend the afternoon. And then eventually from seeing that, my family got me a little plastic keyboard that I tossed into the closet in my bedroom and would go in for hours, hours and hours, playing TV themes and stuff that I heard on the radio and video game themes and just anything that piqued my interest. I would spend time learning by ear. So yeah.
What styles of music did you enjoy back when you started out, and what did you implement into your musical performances?
Well, whenever a lot of my escape, this sort of escapist thing that I had going on was I was living in Florida and I was a loner kid, didn't hang out much with other kids my age, and I liked to play video games a lot, and so that was one of the first things that really stuck in my ear was playing video game music. And a lot of the video games that I played were like Final Fantasy, and a lot of it sounded sort of like classical music. And so it was sort of a challenge to learn to play that by ear, but I really liked the challenge, so I just kept on doing it, and eventually I got really good at playing by ear, and I moved on to more contemporary radio play songs. Yeah. And I would say that after that, the next big significant thing, I took a couple courses in high school, a keyboarding course and a musical theater course, and then I just spent all my time playing piano in those. But after that, I moved to Grand Junction in 2009, and I picked up the guitar for the first time. And when I started playing guitar, I found out that there was a market for it. I started just doing open mics because I felt like it. Then as I did the open mics, I found that I was gaining some popularity while I was also in college getting my degree. And when I started playing for crowds and people kept asking me to come back to the open mic, I eventually got in with some of the talent buyers at the local venues who would see me and say, hey, do you want to play for 3 hours instead of just 15 minutes? And of course I agreed. And from then on, I was working on starting my music career as an inadvertent step that I didn't really see coming while I was getting my college degree. And so college, I finished up getting my bachelor's in writing and just kind of took off with the music career.
What about performing live stuck out with you both back in your past and back when this interview was conducted?
Oh, let's see, there's a couple things. I mean, I enjoy playing for a crowd whenever I can find our common ground, what the things are that they like hearing, what things are that I like to play. It's especially fun when people bring their kids to a gig and their kids just start dancing around and like really having a good time. I do love that. But yeah, I would say just finding some of the original songs that I've written kind of in my own head as I explore through how I like playing music, and finding a lot of the songs by other songwriters who I increasingly admire and respect for their artistry and their different approaches. It's something that I feel like I can do for my entire life because there's no end to the exploration of it.
Is there a particular process, or maybe multiple, that you follow when you're writing your own songs?
It just depends on how I'm feeling at the time. Most of the time, the songs that I write are out of the blue. A melody will stick in my head, or a line will come to me, and I'll be on loop in my head for a little bit, and I'll go ahead and write it down. And then often I will write it down and then leave it. I'll put it in a notebook and forget about it for anywhere from a couple weeks to even years, and then come back later and find that I really like this aspect, or I didn't like that one, or this doesn't pertain to me anymore, but if I change the words here, it will again. And yeah, so I like that element of songwriting, that I can really just go across time and space. I can remember who I was and who I am now and bring those all together to make a song that's maybe not universal, but definitely meaningful to me.
And what do you hope that people will be able to take away from your shows when they come and see you?
Let's see, I'm trying to think of there's a great song lyric that occurs to me when you ask that, and it's a songwriter I very much admire named Todd Snyder, that life is too short to worry and life is too long to wait. It's too short not to love everybody and too long to hate.
In case you're curious about this Todd Snyder song, the original song that this lyric came from is The Ballad of the Devil's Backbone Tavern, which you can stream in multiple places. You can actually listen to it in the Todd Snyder live album Near Truths and Hotel Rooms, and in the original studio album Happy to Be Here. In fact, you can go to ToddSnyderShop.com and get free downloads of a bunch of Todd's original albums that he just re-released as purple versions, including Happy to Be Here. But enough promotion for an artist I'm not talking about today. Let's talk more about Will, because I thought this was where the original interview was going to end, but then he clarified something that he was doing in the background.
Also, you have to excuse me, I'm currently repairing one of my guitar pedals to make sure I can play my next gig, because I have 5 gigs coming up this week, and I don't want to be without this pedal. It's one of the features in my set, so I had to learn how to repair my own pedals, because the turnaround on a repair shop is usually like 2 weeks, and that's not something I want to miss out on.
I didn't realize he was actually able to fix his own guitar pedals, so this was news to me. I decided to keep this portion in, even though it's a bit more technical than some of the usual jargon I put in the podcast, but it was still interesting to me, so I figured I'd keep it in case anybody else was interested.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a touch-and-go process. I mean, by no means am I an electrical engineer, but I can definitely get my pedals working again, at least in a fashion that will get me through a gig until I can get a professional to take a look at it if it's too bad. As a matter of fact, the one that I'm repairing in question is my loop station pedal, and the issue that I had was that I had a gig in Black Rock up in like the casino town, and I laid my pedal down a little hard, and I was worried that it might have hurt something, and sure enough, some of the output stopped producing sound, and so I had to find which outputs on my loop station still did produce sound, and it seemed like a very strange, it was not even that hard of a drop, but it definitely disconnected something. So I was like, okay, this feels like a loose connection, it's acting like a loose connection. So after a little bit of trial and error, I opened up the loop station and did a little bit of guesswork, looked around a little bit, and I found one of the cables which just sort of flipped out of its slot, and so I pushed it back in there, and now it's working again. Saved myself possibly upwards of $75 in having somebody go, oh yeah, there's your problem.
I decided to ask Will about his use of loop stations throughout his shows because this fascinated me. I had no idea he used loop stations.
Yeah, so I started out using a loop station whenever I was in Grand Junction, which is where I moved in 2009. Moved out here in 2017, but started using a loop station, a much smaller version of what I've got right now, just to give a little dimension to what I was doing, particularly to give me some rhythm section behind what I was doing. And after I started using a loop station, I started finding out that I could harmonize myself, or if I got an effects pedal, which was the next purchase, I could actually make my guitar sound like a bass and lay down a bass line while I'm also playing the rest of the song, and just sort of grew into this bigger, more orchestral piece. So, yeah.
And how long have you been using a loop station?
Oh, let's see. I've been using a loop station probably since 2014.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we move on to your next interview?
Oh, I'll say that I do have a lot of new stuff coming out. I wouldn't say I've been on a hiatus, but I mean, the pandemic was sort of a forced hiatus for everyone. But I do have a lot of things that I haven't recorded until recently, and there's going to be a lot of new stuff coming out. And just to keep apprised on all that, I would recommend people go to my website and sign up for my newsletter at willwhalenmusic.com.
As I mentioned earlier, that interview was originally conducted on July 10th, 2023. Little did I know that it would be a year to the day when I ended up releasing the interview for the Mountaineer podcast. Also, a year to the day, almost anyway, on July 9th, 2024, I ended up interviewing Will again for the Mountaineer podcast to do a Then and Now episode. So, if you want to hear what Will has to say for himself at this point in his career, stay tuned until after the ad break. Here's an ozone tip for you. Don't go it alone. Take transit to reduce ground level ozone. Created from pollutants like car exhaust, ozone is the Front Range's biggest air quality issue and a leading cause of respiratory problems. Breathe easier, stress less, and save money by leaving the car at home this summer. Hashtag just skip 2 car trips each week. Know when it matters most. Text Better Air CO to 21000 to sign up for ozone alerts and learn more by going to simplestepsbetterair.org. Music credits will be given at the end of the episode.
Him and you. And I could explode or leave to get a drink. But I'm not gonna hover with my hand on the buzzer for a chance to say what I think. 'Cause I've seen it all.
Welcome back. Now let's skip ahead a year to see where Will has ended up now. Do you mind reintroducing yourself real quick?
Yeah, I'm Will Whalen. I am a singer-songwriter, music creator in Denver. I play piano, guitar, vocals, play about anywhere between 4 and 7 to 8 times a week. Yeah.
And you are once again performing at the Canyon Tavern, aren't you?
That is correct. I believe that's going to be the 21st.
The coincidences keep stacking up. Not only did I interview Will almost a year to the day after I initially interviewed him, but now I'm promoting a show that's exactly a year after the show I was going to promote of his. I couldn't believe how coincidental that was. But enough about these coincidences. What have you been up to in the last year?
Oh, well, I've been just mostly trying to keep up. I believe last year I was still coming off of, say, the tail end of the effects of the pandemic, of trying to make sure things were still booked and that I was getting my life back on track, as I think a lot of musicians and performers were. But this last year has actually been great for me. I have started playing piano at the Broadmoor Hotel down in Colorado Springs for their sing-along piano editions that they have. I'm doing actually 2 nights there at this point. I started doing 1 night a week at the beginning of this year, and they liked what I did so much they had me come for a second.
I know we don't cover or focus on performances that are outside of the Peak-to-Peak area, but I was still generally curious. How often have you been playing at the Broadmoor?
Oh, let's see. So yeah, I did intermittent ones on the schedule in 2023 leading into 2024. So that was going to be like once a month. In 2024, they asked me to start doing weekly starting in, it was actually February.
So how long have you been performing, not just in the Colorado music scene, but in general as well?
So in the Colorado music see. I would say that I wasn't really a live performer by trade until I moved to Colorado. So in the Colorado music scene, I really started, I would say, sometime around 2010. That was when I started performing gigs at bars and breweries, mostly along the western slope. So in Grand Junction. That was where I kind of got my start and started feeling out how live performance could be more than just a hobby, more than just something I really, really enjoyed. And about 10 years later, after doing that for about a decade, I moved out to Denver, and I, in 2017, started performing live at a place called Bluegrass Lounge in Old Town, Nevada, and another place called Officers Club that is over on the east end of town in the Lowry neighborhood. Those were respectively guitar and piano gigs. So had a little variety, mixed that into the rest of my schedule, and eventually word got around and I started getting hired.
What has it been like making your way throughout the Colorado music scene for all of that time and connecting with people along the way?
Oh, well, let's see. That's a good question. So a lot of my experience has been, I don't know, create an ambience, create a mood. It's a lot of what's asked for. It's why a lot of private events start looking for the skills that I bring to the table. They have a very specific idea of what they want their party to look like, what they want their wedding to look like, what they would like their corporate events to look like. So I've played a lot of those with specific instructions anywhere from play something vaguely country/folkish to we would like these very specific songs to be played at very specific times. But every time that I perform, I get to really connect with people and find out what they enjoy, what songs connect with them, the reason that they've even requested a song, which I've gotten a lot more of in playing at Broadmoor. I've got a lot more people who come up and specifically request music because it's advertised as a sing-along night from 9 to 11. And so I've had this very fortunate music laboratory to play with, where I go to the Broadmoor and I start playing at 7 p.m. 7 to 9 p.m. is pretty much whatever I'd like to play, mostly instrumental. And then from 9 to 11 p.m. I find these new songs that I didn't even know that I'd really enjoy until I listened to them and learned them.
Anything along those lines?
Yeah, definitely. The thing that I had to figure out the most was how to promote and sell my music, how to be my own manager, because I think I do pretty well on stage. I perform pretty well, but no one's going to really do that job for me. So I have to be my own promotional manager to tell them what I'm bringing to the table, tell them what I'm offering. And yeah, that's been a lot of the auxiliary study of all this, is finding ways to be an effective business owner and business manager, which I also did file for my LLC this year. So I'm now a legitimate entertainment business owner.
I had forgotten what we talked about in the interview I conducted the year previous, so I wanted a bit of a refresher. You've been playing piano and other instruments since you were much younger, haven't you been?
Yes. Yeah, I've been playing piano since I was about, I would say, 8 or 9 years old. Mostly just playing around, nothing professionally trained or anything, just learning from TV scores and video game music and whatnot. That was what I was surrounded with and what I found really pretty. So I had a pretty good ear, so I learned to pick that up easily.
How have you been able to work on your skills with each of the instruments that you play over the years that you've been performing, all the way from the beginning to now?
Well, the live performance element has definitely taken over a big part of my practice, making sure that I'm delivering something that's not just has some virtuosity to it, but it's also entertaining, that keeps a crowd engaged. I actually have just recently delved into just basic event management, not having an instrument, but trying to run an event, run a party, making sure that everyone's mingling well, having a good time. The party has a general flow to it, and there's a lot of crossover with that. And so that's been the focus, I would say, with the Golden Bee, and just trying to suss out exactly what the room requires and would benefit from.
It sounds like there is a major element of listening to the crowd and seeing what they want to hear performed.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's some people who would prefer to hear instrumental or so classical, I guess, versions of pop songs, and there's others who would like to hear very down-home country folk Americana things. And you can sometimes pretty easily, after the number of years I've been doing this, you can pretty easily start to tell what the vibe of the room is based off of some context clues.
And it sounds like because of the huge repertoire of things that you've brought into your performances, you have had to immerse yourself in a wide variety of different musical styles over the years.
Definitely.
Are there any particular styles that you find yourself gravitating towards in your performances when you have the option?
I would say I've hovered between blues and jazz more than anything. Playing blues, stuff with blues progressions, it has a blues song structure and whatnot. It applies to so much of American music, so many things that we listen to now, so much rock music has an underlying, especially the rock music that I like. Like there's a lot of the newer stuff. Hosier and Teddy Swims, the one who's gotten really big recently, is a lot of this bluesy soul, very much a throwback to classic blues, classic soul, even a little bit of gospel. And so that kind of underlies a lot of the stuff that I do. I always find that really satisfying to play. And I would say that jazz is actually more something I can just noodle around on for an extended period of time. Once you have the theory of some jazz techniques down, you can, I think some musicians call it walking all over the keyboard. You just kind of go wherever you want to and play something ambient that sounds good. It doesn't really have a clear beginning, middle, or end. It's just mood music.
I asked this last year, and I always ask it anyway, so I'm going to ask it again. Is there anything you hope that audience members will be able to take away from your shows when they come and see you?
You have to come and see me again. That would be the first thing. Yeah, I would hope that I would give them an experience they'd want to repeat. And aside from that, I would say just some kind of connection, some sort of experience that we all shared together, whether that's a couple of years back, I played the song that not a whole lot of people that I knew of knew, and it was apparently a song that meant a lot to one of the audience members who had just lost somebody, and they told me that story, they connected with it, and it was a very special moment.
Are there any musical performances in particular that have been some of your favorites or that have stuck out since you started performing live in 2010 here?
Since 2010, that's going back quite a ways. I would say one of my favorite performances was actually near Grand Junction in a town called Gateway. There's a place out there called Gateway Canyon that I would play at about once every 2 weeks. Beautiful campus. It was originally, I believe, owned by the same person who owns the Discovery Channel and since changed hands and whatnot. But the campus is beautiful. It was this amazing Arroyo-style houses and this sort of resort in the middle of nowhere. It's always nice to kind of get away and go play music out in the quasi-wilderness.
Are you planning on releasing any new material soon, or are you going to focus on live performances for the time being?
I've been focusing on live performance a lot, but I do have several songs that are written that I actually have just had the fortune of working on recording this last week, although, as you can hear from my voice, it's a little rattly, so I haven't been able to finish that particular part of the recording. But I am planning on releasing some new stuff coming up in the next couple months.
Is there anything else you'd just like to briefly talk about before we sign off?
Well, let me see. So I have new releases coming out. I have 4 weekly gigs to include 2 at the Golden Bee, as well as one still at the Bluegrass Lounge in Old Town Arvada every Wednesday. I'll be playing at a place called the Rendezvous. That's more of a private community. I'll be doing that every Saturday soon. And I would say the next biggest thing that I've got coming up is the Pine Nut Festival, which is happening down in Trinidad.
Thank you so much to Will for coming on board and joining us for the podcast. Technically for the second time, but really for the first time, since I'm just airing both of his interviews now. If you want to read more about him, then be sure to check out my Music of the Mountains article that I wrote about him for the August 3rd, 2023 edition of The Mountain Ear. And if you want to see him perform live, be sure to check him out at the Canyon Tavern, located at 32138 Highway 72 in Coal Creek Canyon on Sunday, July 21st, 2024, starting at 2 p.m. This is not going to be a normal performance at the Canyon Tavern. It's not going to take place inside. It is going to start in the afternoon at 2 p.m., and it is going to take place out on the porch. It's going to be an outside performance, so definitely be sure to head out to that one. There's also a bunch of music of Will's that you can check out online. You can stream right away and apart from a part of 2 of Will Whalen's albums wherever you get your music. And you can also stream his albums apart from a part of and right away by purchasing them on his website, as well as getting a free download of his self-titled EP and a single of his, September City. You can also purchase a single of his, Former Coast, and keep an eye out for other singles coming very soon, and all this can be found at willwhalenmusic.com. Thank you so much for listening to this Wednesday retrospective edition of the Mountaineer Podcast. If you want to stay tuned for more episodes, then be sure to follow us wherever you found this podcast. And if you want to share us around, we have a much easier way to do that now. Our original Buzzsprout URL was a bunch of numbers, and so at this point, I have changed it to a much easier URL to keep track of, and that is the Mountaineer Podcast. That's spelled THEMTNEAR podcast.buzzsprout.com. So be sure to share that link around if you want more people to listen. And be sure to check out more information about our social media and about myself as a host on that particular website. And remember, if you want to be involved in the podcast in any way, shape, or form, you can contact me at media@themountaineer.com and we'll get something sorted out for you. I'll see you on Friday with a very exciting episode of Music of the Mountains brought to you by the Mountaineer Podcast. The song that you heard in the ad break is called One Foot in the Door, and the song that you are currently listening to is called Shatterproof, and both are written and performed by Whalen. Hopefully, these songs will be coming out very soon, but in the meantime, you can stream a bunch more of his music wherever you get your music, or by going to his website at willwhalenmusic.com. You can also hear him perform live very soon on Sunday, July 21st at the Canyon Tavern.
Cut it short before you capsize on the waves. Don't be brave. Shatterproof. Follow through or falling through the floor.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local Peak to Peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.